This is Invisible Inc., the podcast for BIPOC and Latina women entrepreneurs. And I'm your host, Shubha Chakravarti, founder of Achieve. In this podcast, I talk to women entrepreneurs at every stage of their journey about the challenges, the highs, the lows, and what they've learned along the way. We'll also hear from experts who'll share valuable tips on how to succeed the smart way. Let's jump in. Are you switching to entrepreneurship from a corporate career? Feeling isolated and alone? Confused about startup financing? In today's episode, Renata Merino, LatinX serial entrepreneur, investor, and former investment banker, shares her experiences and tips on all these topics and more. Let's find out. So thank you, Renata, for joining us today. This is wonderful to talk to you as an investor as well as a founder. So thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited.
Great. So let's get started. So you have experience both as a founder and then a mentor and now as an investor. Can you walk us through that journey and how that transpired?
I think in college, I didn't know what I wanted to be when I grew up. So like most of us, I think I followed the crowd, was raised with an immigrant father and a second generation mother. My sisters and I've always been raised as girls can do anything. There's no boy job, there's no girl job. You can do anything. I followed a lot of my male classmates into investment banking right after undergrad, just because I thought that's what people do. I wasn't anything passionate about numbers. As a liberal arts undergrad, I really was behind. I joined State Street Capital in Boston, and I was 2 women out of a team of 30. So it was very male dominated. At the time, I did not know anything about debit credit. I didn't know anything about finance. And so at Bowdoin College, which is where I went as an undergrad, I only took economics. So I did night classes and I knew I had to get myself up to speed. So I really learned a lot about off-balance sheet financing, how to do debit credit, present value money, all the things that we probably know now as older adults, but that back then I didn't know. And I think that was a really good foundation for me in my career in general. One of the biggest turning points that led me to becoming a founder and focused on innovation was I left banking because it wasn't as creative for me. It was very dry. And I wanted to work in-house at a company. And I'm an athlete. I read this book called What Color is Your Parachute? And it identifies your skills with your hobbies. And it matched me with the fitness industry because I'm an athlete and I live in Boston. I networked and finagled my way to Reebok in tech in 1999, where they didn't really call it tech, they called it .com. And I was fortunate enough at age 26 to work directly for the CEO on a special stealth project that was an online footwear customization project. So that experience led me into the world of innovation. And so I knew that I wanted to be in innovation. I didn't know it was entrepreneurship. So I went back to business school at Booth and full-time and focused primarily in new product development, design thinking, and strategy marketing. I did not participate in any kind of startup, but I really learned how to work within a company with a big budget and how to innovate, how to identify a problem, come up with a solution, and launch that solution using a cross-functional team, market research, finance, to all the components of how to launch a startup, a product into the marketplace. So that was my foundation for entrepreneurship. And then I became a mom and I decided I wanted more flexibility. And that led me to the world of entrepreneurship. Moving away from corporate into the startup world back in 2007 really was a lifestyle change for me. Also, having more autonomy. When you're a founder, you get your hands in more things. I wanted more of that. So I ended up working for a serial entrepreneur in the children's products division in media, entertainment, video gaming, publishing. Then I started launching my businesses. So I had 3 startups. One is still in existence. One of the pain points I experienced as a female and Latina is the access to capital. It's just harder for us because it's such a male-dominated field that every time I pitched, every time it was a struggle, and I was revenue positive. And so the last company that I launched was a women's community focused on female founders, helping women scale their businesses, whether it's a small business, consulting business, a tech product, but providing workshops, speaker series, and solutions to help women gain customers. A lot of my women, my members, struggled with the same access to capital to scale. That's the impetus for me to become an investor now, to get on the other side of the fence as a female investor, investing in other female founders to help them scale, because I know it's a pain point that I personally experienced as a founder. 1,800 startups a day in the United States are launched by women. That was a report by Boston Consulting Group and Mass Challenge 3 or 4 years ago, reported that for every dollar invested in a female startup, the ROI is 67 cents on the dollar versus 31 cents on a male founder. The reason why, and this is my hypothesis, is that as women, as we were raised as little girls, we've had to prove ourselves twice as hard. We've had to be twice as educated, twice as prepared. We're not asking for money until we know we can make money. Whereas I think male founders are more aggressive, whether they've proven that they can make money or they're just a little bit more bold, or maybe they've escalated, that they've blown their numbers out of proportion. We won't do that. That's why I bet on women, because I believe as a female founder, we've faced a lot of bricks, arrows, and blocks. It's about resiliency.
One of the startups you mentioned was Blazing Babes. Can you talk a little bit more about what prompted it and what your vision was and how that's evolving?
Really, the impetus came when I became a new mom and moved from the city of Chicago into the suburbs. I felt really isolated as a new mom because I like to go to networking events. I felt like I wouldn't resonate with a lot of the women in the suburbs because I just had this preconceived notion. But to my surprise, I met all these amazing women who were raising their children and launching businesses. At the time, this book came out called The Stiletto Network, written by Pamela Rickman. It was about all these micro coffee groups, wine groups popping up all around the United States, but with very edgy names like Babes in Boyland, really edgy, cool names, anywhere from moms launching businesses in their basement to high-powered CEOs helping each other with funding or making connections. Pamela talked about this network of women helping women. And so I wanted to launch my own Stiletto network, beginning with one chapter only in Chicago. I came up with a business plan, wrote the business plan in 2013, came up with the logo, came up with the name, and we launched. In one night, I signed up 50 women. They paid for their whole year of membership. I had Danny Allen, who was the season 13 winner of The Biggest Loser. That's when we were born. We've grown since then. We were primarily focused on face-to-face networking events. Now with COVID, we've shifted more to online, and we're going to be relaunching. One of the most important things is that it's about women supporting women. So it's a give and get type of environment. The other thing that differentiates us from most other community groups is that we're a B Corp. B Corps are for-profit companies that pay it forward, that use business as a force for good. So what we do in all of our events, we always incorporate an element of giving back. We'll have a sponsor. We'll rate some of the ticket sales. If we have membership dues, ticket sales, the revenue that we've generated, we'll actually go and donate or do a lot of in-kind donations to that particular charity of choice. We've donated quite often to Bright Pink, Dress for Success. These are all nonprofits that help underserved women that don't have the means to advance their careers.
One of the things you mentioned was this need for networks and meeting other women. What are some of the things women founders should do to help them more successfully launch their businesses from these experiences?
Every single founder should join a community of other founders, accelerators, incubators. In 2017, I was accepted to 1871 Chicago's LatinX incubator program. It's a 4-month program where you meet once a week from 9 to 5. It was really primarily for male and female Latinx, different generations, different economic backgrounds, different stages. One of the things that really benefited me is when you're a founder, you're oftentimes very isolated. Maybe the community that you're in, there's not other founders, they're more corporate people. It's really hard to relate and have conversations with them because they don't know the stresses. They're getting a steady paycheck, you're kind of being on a budget. There may be days where you have wins and you gain a customer, or there may be days when you can't even make anything or pay your bills. There's a lot of ups and downs emotionally. One of the things that was hard for me, even though there were other women, there weren't any women that were mothers. I'm managing the house. I'm doing everything with my kids, taking them to school. I have this additional responsibility. It's hard to relate, just to have the community support, to have the discussions, to say, like, how are you doing it? What are some tips? Female founders need to join a community that suits their needs, whether it's an online community, online and offline community. It's not just for emotional support or the personal life, but also guiding them through strategies on how to do your pitch, how to raise capital, how to scale your business, how to do the hiring. What are resources that you could share with other women? One of the groups I'm a member of, and I will promote them till the day I die, is All Raise. All Raise does a great job. It's mostly for female fund managers, not for founders. They have been a saving grace for me in terms of being supportive as an investor. So again, having a community of women for female founders is critical. And that's what we're doing with Blazing Babes.
Are there learnings through your interactions with other founders and as an investor and a mentor as well that you've seen in terms of critical milestones like launch or scaling, getting funded? What are some things that have stuck in your mind?
The pitch deck has to be done correctly. It can be female or male, but it's frustrating as an investor when I get a pitch deck, they don't have the 12 to 15 slide with the right components, because we look at so many different pitch decks. Even if you have great network in your pitch deck, it just doesn't address all the business points. You're just going to lose the interest because we just look really quickly. That's the number one thing. The other thing is, I think you should always talk to a lawyer, is really understanding if you're going to raise, what are the different aspects of raising? Do you always have to raise venture capital? Can you borrow money? Going to friends and family, like trying not to give away so much equity, and understanding your cap table, understanding when you bring on people, it's like a marriage, and not giving away too many shares. A lot of founders don't understand there's advisor shares versus like board member shares. Who's on your advisory board? You start with not giving shares away, and then they can earn shares. And that's really critical to your growth and acquiring new customers and in scaling. So I think really understanding the legal, the financial aspects of the raise, of the cap table, making sure, because a lot of these, and I'm speaking from hearsay, I'm not going to throw all my fellow investors or VCs under the bus, but if you marry the wrong person, meaning like you get the wrong investor on your cap table, they could really take advantage of you. You want to make sure you set yourself up for success and you get the right legal advice and financial advice before you move forward. The other people I like to highlight is First Republic Bank. They have a program for founders, female and male, for their personal banking. So signing up with them to do your personal banking, they'll help and grow with you. And they have an ancillary arm of lawyers that can help you with your raise. I think it's important to have the right support system behind you legally and from a financial aspect.
You talked about making sure that your pitch deck is right. Many women founders don't go for outside funding. Let's say you don't plan to raise outside funding. Do you still think it's important to create this pitch deck, and why?
If you're not going to go to outside funding, having a business plan is really critical. If you're going to run a business, if it's a small business and you're not looking for outside funding, you need to understand how you're going to run your business, especially when you're going to start scaling, understanding the components of a business plan, having a financial model, understanding where your customers are coming from, who your target audience is, what's your mission, what's your tagline. One of the things I always ask all my founders, whether you're going to raise or whether you're just not going to raise, is have a brand Bible. It's a one-page document that has mission, vision, target audience, positioning, brand attributes, tagline. It's a summary of your platform, your startup. Every time you onboard somebody, a new team member, you want to make sure they're using the same language, they're talking about your brand and your company in the same way. It's just to keep everybody on the same page. Having the business plan in lieu of the pitch deck is probably a smart move as any kind of business owner.
One more question on that topic of the business plan. I think one of the things I've heard from starting founders is that they tend to get daunted by the financials you need to put into a business plan. But even before the financials, there are some businesses or founders who don't know what their business model is. What do you do to narrow down key elements of your business plan if you don't know for sure what they are?
I'm going to give an example of when I started a service business that wasn't venture backed. I didn't borrow any money. I just scaled on my own. It was a consulting service that helped get prospective MBA candidates into the top 10 business schools. I started that in around 2007 and scaled it. I actually had to hire other consultants because I had so much demand and not enough people supporting them. I focused mostly on international students because they didn't understand the process of applying to business school. And I'm fluent in Spanish, mostly Latin America. I needed to figure out how to price. I knew that this service sector existed. It didn't exist for international, or maybe it did, but it wasn't prevalent. So I had to start with one client at a time. I found somebody and I said, what would be reasonable for you? I was trying to figure out how much should I charge? We negotiated and I figured it out. At the time, I charged like a package deal. I'm going to do 5 schools for you at this price. I tracked how many hours I put into this candidate. I also did some benchmarking. I asked around as I was going through this arduous process and realizing, wow, this guy doesn't know how to write. He doesn't know how to do a resume. I'm like, I have to do everything for him. I figured out how much work was involved. So then I tried to ask around. I did some benchmarking of other like businesses, consulting businesses, what they charge per hour. I figured out on a spreadsheet after doing some benchmarking, after doing the work, this is what I should be charging in packages, offering an hourly rate, offering a packaging rate. And then as I got the second customer, I would offer them options. Then you tweak the packaging based on the feedback that you get. And then I was able to easily estimate what my future projections were. And then I was also able to figure out the seasonality of my business. When the customers wanted to hire someone, I figured it was around summer. They checked the GMAT. The first application was due. So I was able to figure out on a yearly basis how much money and how much one consultant can handle, how many clients one consultant can handle within a given year. I could project per consultant how much revenue they can drive in based on that. So you should always start with one customer at a time and be able to refine your services or your product based on feedback. That's my recommendation.
Sounds like a great first step for a starting founder, even if they're feeling overwhelmed or challenged by not being able to build a big 30-page business plan, that they can start somewhere with what they have.
Right. You start with what you have, and you just have to know that there's a need for your service or your product. That's in any pre-seed company when you're just getting going. What is the willingness to pay? Is somebody going to pay for what you're coming with your solution? You need to prove it one customer at a time.
I'm going to take one detour. You used a couple of words such as pre-seed, pre-revenue. Are there different stages that whether you're venture funded or not that you can think about that would be helpful to understand?
Sure. Usually the way it works is when you're a startup, whether you're a small business or that doesn't want venture backed or either you have your own money or you have friends and family, because you need money to get going. You need to develop a tech product. If it's a service, you need money to market. Usually you either use your own money or you go to friends and family just to get started, just to prove what we just talked about, that someone's going to pay one customer or 2 customers or 3 customers will pay for your service. The more savvy you can do using your own money to prove your business idea, the better. So if you can stretch $1, good for you. The next level after you've used the friends and family or your own personal funds is called pre-seed. So it's not necessarily that you have to have revenue, some people do, but you've proved that there's a demand for it. That's what we like to refer to as pre-seed. And usually that's check sizes, anything under $1 million. It changes depending on which platform you're talking about or which sector. The seed level is then you've already have a lot of customers. You're already making money, but I need capital. I need to refine the platform. Maybe it's a tech platform. And now I need to scale. Maybe if it's brick and mortar and you've proven one location, you're like, now I want to expand to different locations. So you need the capital, hire some people, refine the technology, expand. And then the next would be Series A, which is a much higher level. I just focus primarily on pre-seed and seed.
One of the challenges that's common to women and women founders is this lack of financial self-efficacy, lack of financial confidence. Have you seen that in the course of advising other women founders? What are your observations and how can women founders get over that?
I've seen some male founders that don't even have a financial model. It's kind of ridiculous. So 2 things. If you don't have the financial acumen and don't know how to build a financial model, I highly suggest you find someone on your team, even an intern or someone that can help you with that. You still need an expert who knows how to do that and can help you. You always want to learn. And even if it's something that you're like afraid to do, I hate dealing with numbers. I'll deal with it, but I'd rather have someone else who loves it and can just give me the high level. But that's not something I'm passionate about. If I have to do it, I'll do it, but I don't want to do it. But having an advisor, somebody on your team, you can also hire it out. I know a lot of people hire out help to build a financial model. You can do that as well. The one area I think that women, myself included, when I was a founder, is what we get stuck on is when we're pitching and we are revenue positive, we get a lot of pushback and some male founders don't. So being ultra prepared with answers, numerous answers, like you can answer it and then the guy will still re-ask the question in a different way, then you're going to re-answer it in a different way. So being persistent and being really confident, it starts with having advisors and people that can give you the self-confidence because you're going to be the one that's pitching.
What I'm hearing is it's about preparation.
Yeah, if you feel like that's a weakness, and any really great leader should know this, you hire your weakness. If you can't afford to pay them, you make sure that they're in your advisory board. So if you want to be a strong company, you always have to hire your weakness. I would never avoid the subject of the financial model. I would hire somebody who can teach you. And then when you're presenting, having that person in the room with you to be able to answer the more intricate financial questions is fine, even if it's a male. So whoever you're pitching to, whoever you're selling to, even if it's a customer, they know that you have everything buttoned up.
One of the things I've seen in the research is this need for a champion. Somebody is going to fall on the sword and say, hey, this is the greatest person ever doing XYZ. How important is that? How do you find one?
I wouldn't say one champion. I think if you're pre-seed, meaning you're pre-revenue or you're just starting out, whether you're fundable or not, I think having a team of advisors. So if you can't pay for a CFO, you want to make sure that you hire your weakness or you find advisors. Start off with people in your network that believe in you, that maybe you've worked with in the past. They're part of your network. Maybe it's not someone you worked with, but a friend of a friend, and say, hey, you're an expert in this area. Let's say you're in the beauty area. You're launching a beauty business and it's makeup. And you found somebody that used to work at J&J. So they've been in beauty and they understand, they love what you're doing. They love your product. They tried it or they love your service. And you can say to them, would you mind giving me an hour of your time for the next 3 months per week and giving me advice on how we're building this business, the product, the packaging, the marketing, or whatever. And then if you like me and I like you and you like what we're doing, I would love to be able to give you advisor shares as compensation for your time. It's almost like dating. You kind of start off seeing each other, like each other. And then if it works out, then you want to compensate someone and maybe potentially they would invest money into your company and you give them more than just advisor shares, but using your network to find the people that could give you advice on how to get on the shelf at a retail. Maybe it's an e-commerce expert, maybe it's a social media expert, the marketing expert, whatever the areas that you're not good at and you don't have connections with, that's where you need to fill in. So I think it's not just one champion. I think it's really a team of advisors.
One thing that's kind of been hot in the news lately is unconscious bias. Have you faced this on either side? What advice would you give to a woman founder who's facing unconscious bias?
I think there's a bias with mostly male-dominated venture capital space on female founders. They don't know finance. They don't know numbers, even if with experience. It's very disheartening. You have to be ultra prepared. You really need to have a strong team behind you and be prepared with multiple questions. There's more roadblocks that we face as female founders in terms of unconscious bias. I've heard the story where if you're the founder and you have a junior person, like an intern that's male, who's there, and the male venture capitalists are directing all the questions to the male intern, you really need to say, you know what, I appreciate you directing all the questions to John here or whatever, but I'm the founder and I'll answer the questions. You don't want an investor on your cap table that's not going to give you the respect that you deserve. So I think it's harder. It's like a marriage. So if you're getting bias from the investor, you don't want that person. I know you need the money, but that means you have to be very good about talking to other founders and who they've used to invest in their companies, because word gets around. So talk to the female founders getting funded by non-biased investors and get referrals that way. That's what I highly advise.
You mentioned earlier that you're a double minority. I can certainly relate to that. What's different or what's more challenging when you're not only a woman, but you're also a woman minority as a founder? What advice would you give them to overcome some of these barriers?
Being a minority is a good opportunity right now because a lot of people are investing in minorities, turning to other successful minority founders or minority fund managers that have raised, scaled their business and asking them for advice. Leveraging who's done it well is the way to go. Finding other double minority female founders that have been successful and asking their advice and their strategies of whatever you're tackling, raising capital, scaling your business, acquiring a customer, marketing. I think it's really important to get advice from other founders. I think that's the best way.
The second to last question is, what are the top 5 pitfalls that you would caution women entrepreneurs against?
Let me see. That's a really good question. I think hubris is a major problem in some founders. I also think hubris is a major problem in business in general, but really having a chip on your shoulder, especially if you're a repeat founder, I think nobody wants to work with somebody who has ego. Also, that's critical is, why are you the right person to do this? How does your personal story relate to why you're doing this? Women or men, what's your why? How does your past career history, personal history relate to what your why is? People invest in people. And so humility and knowing your why is a really good hook. It should come from an authentic place as well, because we're investing in people and we're investing in you. It's the female founder. I want to know, does she have a partner? Who's her husband or partner? And is she supported by them? Does this person support her and what she's doing? Because if someone who was in a relationship where my startup wasn't supported, it really can tank your business. If you don't have the infrastructure of support behind you at home, it can really be the demise of your company. The other fourth is proving in your pitch or whenever you reach out is that you're very agile at overcoming adversity. What happens in a business, you have a business plan, things are going to change. You need to be able to change on a dime to keep your business alive. So proving however it is with your actions and what you've done in the past, how you've been able to overcome adversity and changes in your life. That's a huge critical skill, whether you're male or female. I think women are better at it. We don't complain, we just do. The other fifth thing that I like empathy. Somehow showing that you have empathy for your customers. When you're solving a problem and you've got the solution, you need to have empathy for this problem. It needs to matter to you. So those are my off-the-cuff top 5.
I love it. So my last question, if you just had to leave a woman founder with 3 things, like keep these 3 things in mind, what would those be?
Number 1, self-care. Set up a routine for yourself that involves self-care, whatever self-care means to you. I think eating healthy, exercising, drinking water, mental health, like meditation. Set up a daily protocol for you that keeps your mental, emotional, and physical health intact. When mom's down, everyone's down. When the founder's down, everyone's down. So you need to stay healthy, mental, physical, emotional health. Join a community of support. Make sure you have a community of founders, female founders, whether it's an accelerator, an incubator, an online community, an offline community, a place you go to work that you have the support system needed. You're working in an office alone or your home office and you're not connecting with anyone else because you're having a stressful day, it's going to really affect you. Number 3, okay, this is going to be hard. This is going to be an anomaly for someone who is an investor. This is against the grain, but if you don't need to get outside funding, don't get outside funding.
I love it.
You stretch your dollar as far as you can. Let me tell you something. If you can generate a significant amount of revenue on $1, try to do that the best, because your valuation is going to skyrocket and you give away less of the farm. You keep most of the equity. So, I mean, this is just going against you're probably going to quote me on this, but that's fine. I'm totally cool with that.
I love it. Awesome. Thank you so much for
you. This is fun.
This is phenomenal. Thank you for listening to today's episode. Find show notes and more at achieve.co. That's achieve.co/podcast. Like what you heard? Hit subscribe on Spotify, Apple, or Google Podcast and never miss another episode. Want to help others like you? Leave us a review and tell a friend. See you on the next episode. Now, go achieve.